Hello everyone, welcome to this evening update for today, the 10th of August 2024. I just hope you have been enjoying your Saturday. So we're going to be talking about our tropical disturbance Invest 98L. Now it is designated as an invest because it is an area of investigation, which means it's being closely watched for development. So we're going to be taking a look at some model data. We'll be looking at what is expected in terms of the potential track, even the potential intensity of the system. And by the way, by the next 2 days, by Monday going into Tuesday, it could acquire tropical storm status. The next name, Ernesto. So it's likely that we're looking at future Ernesto right here. That may be a problem for the northeastern Caribbean. It's pretty likely at this point. So let's get straight into it. Here we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery, very colorful right here, and we can see that cluster of all that activity. Now it is disorganized right now, but it is exhibiting those signs of organization, so it's not looking too good now. However, headed to the next day or two, we should see a better presentation on satellite imagery of this system here as it strengthens and takes advantage of the favorable environment that it is currently in. Seems as though another tropical wave is emerging from the African coast. One is in the Caribbean. We can see all of that activity behind it that has been impacting parts of the Lesser Antilles. Some areas have experienced some pretty decent downpours, some thunderstorms as well, and there have even been some instances of flooding in a few spots. Hopefully nothing major there. Northern South America pretty active this evening, just as I had anticipated when I did my update video this morning and gave you the rainfall forecast. Similar thing for Central America. And as we zoom closer to the Caribbean here, we have a better look of what's been going on in parts of Cuba, Jamaica. There have been some thunderstorms developing. Similar thing for some spots in Haiti. So overall, aside from that tropical wave and that kind of robust activity that kicked up this afternoon in Central America, there isn't anything too major in the region right now. Going back to our disturbance, so that's going to be the focus of this evening's update. My next update will be early tomorrow morning. So, as I said, high 90% chance of formation over the course of the next 7 days, 50% chance of formation through the next 2 days. But the chance has been on the rise, and I am expecting that it may become a named storm or at least a tropical depression by Monday going into Tuesday within that time span. And that's also the likely time frame of impacts in the Lesser Antilles. By the middle of the week, that is when it could be a problem for the Greater Antilles. So let's go ahead and take a look at some model data now. First, we're going to be taking a look at the ensembles for the GFS, and then we'll be looking at what other models have to show in terms of where the disturbance could head. So we've got the GFS, and we can see all of these colorful lines. We see that bold black line. Now, those smaller lines are different members for the GFS, and the black line is the mean or the average of all of them. So the mean or average track that is expected. So we can see that the track takes the system into the Caribbean, crossing through the northeastern islands and moving back into the Atlantic waters, and eventually passing maybe to the west of Bermuda and moving out to the northeast. So that is what the GFS ensembles are showing here for the most part. That's what the mean track is showing. And by the next 2 to 3 days, that's when impacts will be likely in the Caribbean. And in terms of the impacts, generally what's to expect is those periods of a lot of heavy rain that may trigger flooding, strong winds, as well as storm surge, which is the coastal flooding because of the winds of the system pushing the water on shore. However, the magnitude of the impacts, meaning how severe those impacts would be, will all be dependent on different things. Number one, the size of it. Number two, the actual intensity of the system as it is going to be passing. And number three, the proximity it is to the different land areas. So say, for example, just an example here, if this is going to be moving within the vicinity of, let's say, Antigua, and it's going to be a tropical storm at the time with, say, maximum sustained winds up to 60 miles per hour with higher gusts, then there could be those maximum winds up to 60 miles per hour, gusts being a little bit stronger, the storm surge, lots of heavy rain expected. But for somewhere that may be a bit further south, such as Dominica, the impacts may not be as severe, especially if the system is a bit more compact and not very large and disorganized. So it will all vary based on the structure of it at the time. And that is the importance of these continuous updates that I provide, because so much can change in a very short amount of time and nothing is really solid just yet. I mean, we're still talking about something a couple days out. And another thing that I'm expecting maybe by tomorrow is some watches being issued for parts of the northeastern Caribbean islands. So that may happen. There could be some tropical storm watches being posted. None are there now, but seeing that models are pretty much consistent on where this thing could head and showing it being a problem for the Northeast Islands, I am expecting that we will eventually be seeing some tropical storm watches in effect in a day or so. As it pertains to the euro, here we can see that the euro members are actually showing a little bit of a similar track right here. So we're not seeing that bold black line, which is the mean track, but seeing that these are kind of tightly packed, we would say something like this. That could be the mean track based on what the different members are expecting for the potential track of the system. Looking at all different models right now, we can see that they're also showing something similar. Now, some of the models want to keep the system generally offshore and want to show the center missing the Caribbean islands, which would be great, but the vast majority are showing it being at least close enough to unleash some dangerous or some significant impacts. Pertaining to intensity right now, we've got our intensity graphic here, so we can see the green shading for tropical storm, yellow for Cat 1, orange for Cat 2, red for Cat 3, and as we go out there, we have the forecast hours, so 24 hours a day out, 48 2 days, 72 3 days, 96 4 days, and so on. So as we're going to be heading into the next 2 to 3 days, that's when most models expect that 98L will intensify into a tropical storm, in line with what I've been highlighting. But take a look at this. Compared to this morning, only about 2 models were showing it becoming a hurricane. Now we've got the majority of models expecting that we will see a hurricane become of this. Why? Let's go on to the conditions. First, we're looking at the dry air map. So when there's a lot of dry air out there, it is unlikely that we're going to see a lot of intensification, because the dry air is essentially an enemy to tropical cyclones. The very dry environment is not what they need. Actually, the opposite, a very moist environment. So when we got the dry air kind of helping to infiltrate these systems, they may sometimes struggle to get those thunderstorms really going and to gain some intensity. But ahead of it, we're not seeing a whole lot of dry air. North of it, definitely a lot. It's quite plentiful out there. By the way, the more vibrant colors of reds and even headed to those pinkish shadings we're seeing indicates those areas of denser dry air. But ahead of it, it's looking generally conducive enough to allow the system room to intensify. Next, we're looking at this graphic here. A lot of swirling going on, but we've got the white outline of the different land masses. We've got the Caribbean islands, the Americas, and right in there is where we have the disturbance. Now, what do the colors mean? The greens indicate a favorable environment in terms of the upper level winds. Stronger upper level winds equals more disruption for developing tropical cyclones. So if there is favorable upper level winds, that means there won't be as much disruption. That is essentially what the greens indicate. The yellows indicate that the winds are a bit disruptive, but kind of not so favorable, but also not very unfavorable. However, the reds indicate that those upper level winds very much disruptive and will allow the system a hard time to get itself together. Let's look ahead of it. We can see all of these green shadings. Remember, it'll be moving on a generally west-northwestward track. So as it moves to the west-northwest, it will encounter a conducive or favorable environment with those upper-level winds that won't be much of a bother for it. Nextly, one of the big things here, the sea surface temperatures. It's very warm and very much supportive of intensification, not only at the surface but beneath the surface. There's a lot of energy stored there ready to fuel this thing to intensify. So I definitely expect a tropical storm within another day or two, and eventually a hurricane is likely from this system here. Most of the models are showing that it will eventually become a hurricane. And then, as I said, as it relates to impacts, there are so many factors affecting what the impacts may be for different locations, but generally I would say that the following areas are to keep watch. The Lesser Antilles, especially the Leeward Islands, Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bartholomew, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saba, St. Eustatius, Antigua, Barbuda, Guadeloupe, going to Dominica, maybe even Martinique, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, the Southern Bahamas, and Turks and Caicos Islands. all these areas should be keeping watch. Now, if this is going to continue with what the models are showing and will be a problem for land, the first areas that will experience impacts would be the Lesser Antilles, and that would be within the next 2 to 3 days. So guys, I'm here to keep you posted. As I highlighted this morning, I'm going to be doing my dual updates as necessary, just to ensure that you always have the updates or the information at hand at what's going on with the system and what the latest is from our official sources, such as the National Hurricane Center. So that's essentially what I wanted to share with you in this update video this evening. Really just giving you a breakdown of what we could see happen with the system and what the update is. And so guys, as I said, my next update will be tomorrow morning early, and stay tuned for that. So if you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments. I'll get to you when I have the chance to do so. And remember to always be weatherwise.